everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd Family part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. I hope everybody's Veterans Day is going fantastic. I debated on whether or not to come on here live this time of the day. I thought about waiting till tonight because I've been getting a lot of good comments and feedback when I go live at nighttime. But I thought, hey, it's a holiday, so a lot of people are off today because of that. So let's go ahead and go on here live the middle of this Monday and see if we get any response. If you come on here live, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section down below. And I apologize for the sun shining through the window behind me, but hey, it's a beautiful day, so I don't mind the sun being out. But you've seen my pretty face in enough videos to know how good looking I am, so you can afford to go one video without seeing my beautiful face. It's a little shady, but feel free to leave a comment in the comment section down below. Give the video a like, a thumbs up. If you have not subscribed, please do so. It takes about 2 seconds and it helps the channel out tremendously. And make sure you share the video on all social media platforms. Today, I just want to talk in general college football. Of course, later on in the week, we'll preview all the games coming up on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. But I haven't been talking enough about the midweek games. And I feel like I need to, because now that we're in mid-November, we are fastly counting down the days to the end of the regular season. So if you're a college football fanatic, you need to start watching these Tuesday and Wednesday games, even if you're not a fan of any of the teams, just because it's college football and there's not a whole lot of games left. We only have 3 weeks left in the regular season. And of course, then we'll have conference championship game weekend, and then we'll have the Army-Navy game, which always has a Saturday all to itself. It's always the second Saturday in December. And then right after that, it's bowl season. So we are counting down the days to the end of the regular season. So I want to give some love to the Tuesday and Wednesday games, but also a few other news and notes just from the world of college football. I see some folks are in here live already, so appreciate you tuning in. Feel free to leave a comment in the comment section down below. I try my best to respond to every comment as long as it's logical. I feel like if it's a robot, I'm not going to comment, but all the logical comments that I feel like are real people, I try my best to respond to them. But coming up tomorrow night, 7 o'clock on the CBS Sports Network, we have Ball State and Buffalo. 7 o'clock on ESPN2, we have Western Michigan and Bowling Green. And those are actually two pretty good football teams. That should be a good game. That game's on ESPN2. And on ESPNU at 7 o'clock, we have Central Michigan and Toledo. Toledo's another good football team. Toledo's generally good every year. It seems like they win about 8 or 9 games every year, but since they play in a group of 5 conference, they don't have no outstanding coach or outstanding players. Nobody talks about them, but Toledo's generally a pretty good team just about every year. Then coming up on Wednesday night, 7 o'clock on ESPNU, we have Kent State against the Miami of Ohio Redhawks. 7 o'clock on the CBS Sports Network, we have Akron against Northern Illinois. And when Northern Illinois beat Notre Dame, everybody thought, oh, they're a good football team. They're not very good. Then 7 o'clock on ESPN2, we have Eastern Michigan against Ohio. So any directional Michigan school plays either Tuesday or Wednesday. We have a Western Michigan and Central Michigan tomorrow, and then we have Eastern Michigan on Wednesday. And I don't think they have a Southern Michigan school as far as there's no team that's called Southern Michigan or South Michigan, but we have Western Michigan, Central Michigan, and Eastern Michigan all playing midweek games this week. A lot of people call the midweek games Tuesday night Maction or Wednesday night Maction because a lot of times the midweek games are the MAC schools, and that's because the MAC is one of few conferences that doesn't have its own television network. I believe Conference USA even has one. I think the Atlantic Conference has one. I believe the Sun Belt has one. But to my knowledge, the MAC does not have one. So if you're a fan of a MAC school or go to a MAC school, you can't pay extra money to get MAC TV because I don't think it exists. So if your team is not on TV on Saturday, if you don't go to the game, you don't get to see it. So at least them playing on Tuesday nights and Wednesday nights, they're on national TV. So it does give the fans of those schools a chance to actually watch them in prime time. And everybody that loves football is going to be watching because you want football and it's the only game on. So hopefully the NFL will never get so greedy they start playing on Tuesday nights too. Hey there, yes. Glad to have you here. And the NFL has gotten so greedy now that this year they kicked off the season with that Friday night game between the Eagles and the Packers. And I believe either later this year or next year they're going to start having Wednesday night games. And they already have Thursday night games. And of course, when it comes close to the end of the season, they start having Saturday games. So if the NFL ever starts having Tuesday night games, it will destroy what ESPN does with the MAC conference. But as of right now, I think it's a good idea because you want football and it's the only game on. And most people don't have family plans on a Tuesday night. So usually most people are going to be home on a Tuesday night. So it gives you a chance to sit down and just watch football. No dog in the fight, just watching football. So that's all the games on Tuesday and Wednesday. And of course, later on this week, as I said, we will talk about all the games coming up on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. But a couple other news and notes just from the world of college football. Xavier Restrepo is now the all-time leader in receptions for the Miami Hurricanes. Think about back in the day, you know, the 80s and 90s when Miami was pretty much a top 5 team just about every year, and all the great receivers they had back in the day. But their all-time leading receiver is Xavier Restrepo. Seems like he's played there since about 2005. And I know that he got an extra year of eligibility, but still, you think about Miami, the past 4 or 5 years until they got Cam Ward this year, it's not like they've had great quarterbacks throwing the football. You know, they've had average quarterbacks at best, but somehow, some way, Restrepo always manages to get about 5 or 6 catches every single game, regardless of who is throwing the ball. Hey there, Nubia. Glad to have you here. Hey there. I'm going to say that's Leper. Glad to have you here on this Monday. I got a thick accent. Well, I appreciate that. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. And yes, I'm assuming you're an Arkansas fan because you said the Hogs are the best. And Nubia, you are watching from Brazil. So glad to have you here from Brazil here on this Monday. I'm not sure what time it is over in Brazil, but nevertheless, glad to have you here. I'm glad you're tuning in on this Monday. Please give the video a like, a thumbs up. If you have not yet subscribed, please do so. I would greatly, greatly appreciate it. Takes about 2 seconds, and it helps the channel out tremendously. And Leper, you said I've got a thick accent. I'm going to assume you mean Southern accent. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing in your eyes, but this is my accent. This is the way I talk. I can't help it. And hey there, TJ. Glad to have you here on this Monday. And Jake Brenningstool is now the all-time leader in receptions for tight ends at Clemson. And you think about back in the day, Clemson has had some pretty good tight ends. And thank you, TJ. You have a blessed day too, my man. And yes, this is just my accent. I can't change it. It's the way I talk. But Clemson's had some good tight ends over the years. But the problem with Clemson is they've never really used their tight ends the right way. I mean, even back in the day when they had Dwayne Allen, I can recall them talking about Dwayne Allen when he was a freshman before the season started, talking about how good he was going to be. But then he never saw the field at all. If he did, it was basically as an extra blocker on the field. He was basically almost a junior before he really started seeing a lot of playing time and getting the ball thrown to him. And it was the same way with Jordan Leggett. There for a while, we got all this talk about Jordan Leggett, but then you never saw him. But Jake Brenningstool's freshman year, they talked about how good he was going to be. And then he'd get one series, and then you wouldn't see him again until the third quarter. So luckily, they finally started using him the way they should have used him a long time ago. But he's been there forever. But he is really, really, really good. And I think he could have even more receptions if he was used back when he was a freshman the way he should have been. But Clemson's just never used their tight end the way they should. They always start the season by saying, oh, yeah, this year we're going to use tight ends more. And then when the season starts, they use them more to block, but they don't use them as far as in the passing game. Hello there, Levi. Glad to have you here. Good tight end can block and run short routes, but need to be able to work the deep routes. Some of them can. And yes, you actually cannot send money on this channel. I appreciate you asking, but I do not make any money doing this. Maybe there'll be a day and time when I do. And if that day and time comes, when it comes, I will let people know, and they'll be able to, if they do so choose. But up to this point, as of this Monday, November the 11th, 2024, I do not make any money at all doing this. I just do it because I love talking. I love chatting with all the people in the comments section. I love responding to all the comments. But I don't make money doing this yet, so I can't tell you how to send in money when you can't. What are my plans with this channel? My plans, TJ, are I'm hoping that eventually one day the channel explodes and the channel grows and people from all over the U.S. and the world in general will watch the channel, and I'll get on here and do videos, and my videos will be getting 45,000 views. That's what I'm hoping. But I know this day and time that's hard because almost everybody has a YouTube channel. And Levi, I don't just talk Clemson. I talk other sports, other teams. I did a video yesterday. I want to say last night, but it was sometime yesterday, where I talked college football. I talked the NFL. I talked some NASCAR. I talked some NBA. So I'm a Clemson fan, but I don't just talk Clemson. I talk other sports. I talk other teams. And if I am talking Clemson, I'm giving an honest opinion. I'm not being an overly positive fan or an overly negative fan. I'm just giving my honest opinion. I don't pull punches. I'm not malicious. I don't call for anybody to be fired. I don't call anybody names. I don't use vulgar language. But I call things the way I see them. Levi, you're subbing. I appreciate that. I really do. I'm a huge NASCAR fan, and generally, most of the time, when the NASCAR season starts, hello there from Australia, Z. I usually, just about every week, sometime during the season, will give a NASCAR review. Hey there, Rowan. You subscribed. I appreciate that. I usually try to do a NASCAR review once a week where I'll talk about who won the truck race, who won the Xfinity race, and who won the Cup race. But then as the season goes on and baseball starts and football starts, I don't talk about it as much because I don't get a lot of feedback from it. And I love NASCAR, but I'm not going to come on here and spend 20 minutes talking NASCAR and get no views and no response because it's a waste of my time. But if I could get more people to talk NASCAR with me, I could talk NASCAR just about every day. I have a southern accent. Well, thank you, Z. I appreciate that. And you're from UK, TJ. That's good. And F, glad to have you here as well. But I've always been a huge NASCAR fan. But back to the question about my plans. Those are my plans, but it's hard this day and time because everybody just about has a YouTube channel, and about everybody gets on there and tries to be entertaining in their own certain way, and it works for them. But I'm not going to come on here and change who I am. I'm not going to come on here and have a completely different personality. I'm not. I'm going to come on here and be the same way on here as I am in person. If you ever met me in person, I'm the same way I am on here. I don't have a different personality. I don't have a different name. None of that stuff. This is me. It's who I am. So it's hard for me to stand out because I'm just me. The people that are overly positive, they stand out because they're overly positive. The folks that are overly negative stand out because they're overly negative. And I'm not going to do that. I'm going to call things the way I see them. I'm not being over the top in a positive way or negative way, just calling things the way I see them. College football is so different now that players can get endorsements and change teams. Yes, it is. And I've talked about this, Levi, on the channel. You know, it's good for the on the field product because you're seeing less and less of those games, especially in conference play, where you pretty much know right away who's going to win, and it's going to be one of the top half of the conference teams against the bottom half of the conference teams, and the game's over at halftime. You don't see games like that now because the talent is spread out amongst all the schools. So it makes for better product on the field. You just never know any given Saturday what might happen. So that's good, but it's bad because when you watch it, they spend all their time talking about the transfer portal, talking about the NIL, and they're not wanting to talk about the product on the field. So it's bad from a political side because it makes the sport almost too political, but it's good from an on the field product side. So if you can watch the game on TV with the volume turned down or on mute and just watch the game, it's good. But it's bad because all they talk about is this player going here and this player's getting this and this player's driving that. And you've had Georgia quarterback Carson Beck has played since a hot pile of garbage since the middle of September, and all they talk about is him driving a Lamborghini. Nobody cares what you drive if you ain't playing good. But that's part of the NIL and the way things are going. You've seen Tony Bennett and Jay Wright from the college basketball side and Nick Saban from the football side that have all retired because of the whole NIL transfer portal thing. You're going to see it more and more, but it's the landscape now. You either like it and still watch it or stop watching the game because of it. But if you love college football, it just seems kind of illogical to me that you would go to bed loving college football and wake up the next day and say, yeah, guys can transfer now. I'm going to stop watching. You can't all of a sudden no longer like the game because a player's transferred somewhere. But I don't know how they're going to stop it because, there was talk 10 years ago before it started that it was coming down the pipeline, and the NCAA could have stepped in right then and tried to stop it, but they didn't. So now there's no restrictions on transferring. There's no restrictions on NIL. So once it starts, I don't know how you can stop it. They've tried to turn it over to the courts, and the courts have pretty much told them, hey, you run this league, you stop it. And they've waited too long. But I can recall when I was in high school, people talking about players getting paid. And I always said 20 plus years ago, that's a bad idea, terrible idea, because once it starts, it's going to ruin the game. And I saw it coming 20 plus years ago, and it's happened. I know the players didn't get paid, and a lot of folks say, man, they should get paid. They putting their body on the line, and I get that. Maybe you didn't get paid, which I still say there was some players at certain schools that got paid. But let's say that you're blinded by that and you believe nobody got paid. Maybe they didn't, but they were getting free classes, They're getting free cars. They're getting free meals. When you've got a free house and a free car and a free meal and a free cell phone, you don't need money. What's your money for? You're in school. You've got everything you need and you're in school. You don't need money. So granted, they may not have been making money, but when everything you've got's paid for, you don't need money. If somebody gave me a free car and a free house and free gas and a free phone, I would say, hey, I don't need money. I've got free food. I've got a free car. I've got a free house. I don't need money. So what it leads to now is players getting money and spending money on things they don't need just because they have money. So I don't know how you can stop it, but it makes for a better product on the field. But it makes it too political off the field. You turn the radio on now during the week. Instead of them breaking down games, they're breaking down, what player's going to transfer where next. So it's destroyed the talk of the sport because all the focus now is on the off the field stuff, but it's made for a better product on the field. And Florida State has fired 3 coaches. They fired offensive coordinator and offensive line coach. His name was Alex Atkins. And they fired defensive coordinator Adam Fuller. And they fired their wide receiver coach Ron Dugans. Now, Florida State's had an absolutely abysmal season. I mean, just an absolutely abysmal season. And Levi, I'll try to get back to your NIL talk here in just a minute, but I want to make sure I talk about Florida State because that was one of the main topics for the video. But Florida State's had an abysmal season. Does their coordinator need to get fired? No. The wide receiver coach, maybe because their receivers can't create separation and they can't catch. But when you have the kind of season Florida State's had, right now they're 1-9. More than likely they're going to finish 2-10. I think they play, I believe, Charleston Southern right before Florida. They'll win that game, but I don't think they'll beat Florida. So they're probably going to finish 2-10. And when you have a season like that and you don't fire anybody, then people look at it and say, well, you suck and you're complacent because you made no changes. So when you're as bad as Florida State is this year, you have to fire somebody. I understand the defensive coordinator getting fired, and I understand the receiver coach getting fired. The offensive coordinator, not so much. He was also the offensive line coach, so maybe you could have hired somebody to coach the offensive line and let Alex Atkins only focus on calling plays. But I've mentioned this about Florida State since September. Their offensive line can't block. They can't run the ball. And their receivers can't create separation, so you can't throw the ball. So when you can't run and you can't throw and your receivers can't get open, I don't really know what kind of plays you're supposed to call. And I talked about this yesterday when I was talking about Georgia, and most of their fans always blame their problems on Mike Bobo. Georgia can score 90 points in a game and they're going to say, fire Mike Bobo. But if you watch their game on Saturday, their offensive line could not block Ole Miss at all. The Ole Miss defensive line just destroyed Georgia's offensive line. And when your offensive line can't block, I think Georgia averaged like 1.8 yards a carry on Saturday. When your offensive line can't block and you can't run the ball and your quarterback is throwing bad passes, when he does throw good passes, Georgia leads the country in drop passes. So when you can't catch the ball and you can't block and you can't run the ball, how can you blame the coordinator? What is he supposed to do? And yes, I am not a fan of anybody. I do not follow politics at all, so I don't support anybody. But thank you for asking, but I don't follow anybody. You will never hear me discuss politics. I will not do it. I will turn the channel off before I talk politics. I don't like it. I can't stand it. I don't follow it. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is, why is it that nobody's talking about Dylan Sampson for the Heisman? Now, granted, he's not going to win, but anybody that knows Tennessee always thinks about them having a great offense and a great passing game. Well, this year there's been times where they struggle to have 100 yards passing because they just can't throw the ball downfield this year consistently. Whether it's the quarterback, the receivers, the line, whatever you want to blame, the fact is Tennessee's passing game this year in a few games has been almost non-existent, and they're still sitting here at 8-1, and maybe top 5 in the playoff poll. We'll find out when it comes out tomorrow night. But Dylan Sampson is pretty much running their offense. Without him, they have no offense. And now, here it is, mid-November. This is around about the time you start hearing about all the guys that might win the Heisman, and Dylan Sampson don't even get mentioned. Now, he's not going to win it, but this is the first year in a while that, honestly, if you had to poll me right now on who would win, I couldn't tell you, because I really do not know. It's usually almost every year a quarterback award. So maybe Cam Ward wins it because he's quarterbacking for a top 5 team, but I wouldn't bank on that. But outside of Cam Ward, to me, there ain't no other quarterback that even deserves the award this year. But it's usually a quarterback-driven award. Now, Travis Hunter should win it, and would I be surprised if he won it? Yes, because he's not a quarterback and he's not a running back. And almost every year a quarterback wins the award, but if not, it's a running back. And Travis Hunter doesn't play quarterback or running back, but he should win the Heisman, but he shouldn't. But Ashton Jeanty is the best player in the country that only plays offense. We know Travis Hunter plays both sides, but Ashton Jeanty is the best offensive player in the country, but he's not going to win the Heisman because he plays for Boise State. And Dylan Sampson's not going to win it, but the fact that Tennessee is borderline top 5 team and they have no passing game at all, and they're sitting here at 8-1, and nobody even talks about him, is a surprise. But even Tennessee fans, they don't even talk about their running back. But their running back is their offense. But let me get back to Levi talking about the transfer portal, NIL, and I'm a Clemson fan, so I say this from a Clemson perspective. And I think I mentioned this last week here on the channel that I don't think Dabo Swinney is going to coach more than about 3 more years tops if we keep going down the path we're going on, because when the whole NIL thing started, Dabo was just like Nick Saban and came out from the get-go and said, it's a bad idea. It's a terrible idea. I think Dabo's going to give it 2 or 3 more years to see if there are changes, and if there are, what kind of changes. And I feel like if there's not any changes at all, or at least the changes that Dabo thinks needs to be made, I think he'll retire, just like Nick Saban, just like Tony Bennett, just like Jay Wright, because it's no longer collegiate athletics. But I think Dabo is trying to be patient. But he said from the get-go it's a terrible idea, and he's right. But also, Clemson doesn't have the boosters of Ohio State or a Georgia or a Oregon and teams like that. So when it comes down to a player, if he's going to go to your school based on how much he's going to make, Clemson's going to lose that every single time. And they're going to start losing games consistently, and everybody's going to say, oh, what's Dabo doing wrong? When in reality, he's doing the same thing. But you're going to have most of your players now that are coming out of high school that are going to go to a college based on how much they're going to make. And they're always going to make more at Oregon or Ohio State than they're going to make at Clemson. That's just a fact. Clemson just doesn't have the booster club. They don't have the booster support of those big-time programs. So if nothing changes, they're going to start losing all these players because they're going to make more money somewhere else. And that's why I supported, I think his name is Hunter Dickinson, but don't quote me on that, but I believe his name is Hunter Dickinson. He is a college basketball player for Kansas, and he was originally going to play his college basketball somewhere else, and he ended up going to Kansas. And when he was asked why he went to Kansas, he pretty much came out and said, it's for the money. I'm going to make more there than I'm going to make anywhere else. And even though it came across as him being arrogant, I appreciated the kid's honesty. He's telling you, I don't care if I win there. I'm going there for the money. And I wish more players would do that. But these players come out and, oh, I'm transferring because they got this guy as a coach, or I'm transferring for playing time. No, you're not. You're going there because you're making more money. And in the baseball world, that's why I got mad at Dansby Swanson, which I never was a Dansby Swanson fan. I think he sucks. But when he left the Braves to go to the Cubs, he tried to come out and say, well, it's not about the money. Look, dude, the Cubs offered you way more money and way more years. You signed there. It's about the money. Just come out and say that. Be honest. I hate when coaches and players try to make fans idiots. Like, just because we're fans, we know nothing. So I appreciated Hunter Dickinson going to Kansas and coming out and saying, I'm going there for the money. All players should say that. If you come out of high school and you've got 5 or 6 offers, and the school you chose you because they're going to pay you more money, and you chose them for the money, just say, hey, I'm going there because I'm going to make more money. Just be honest. It has nothing to do with who the coach is, nothing to do with who the quarterback is, nothing to do with if you're going to win or not. You're going there because you want the money. Just be honest. But that's my full thoughts on the transfer portal and the NIL, since Levi was talking about it earlier in the comment section. But let's go ahead and get our dad joke of the day in here. Did you know that no matter how far you push the envelope, it remains stationary? And that does it for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of 3. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.